The CNN Zucker Cuomo saga and why this is the perfect example of what Andrew Breitbart would call the Democrat media complex. Now, first things first, my friend Chris Plant, who has a great syndicated talk radio show, he's a fantastic host. He originates his show out of Washington, D.C., the same station I'm on, WMAL. He used to work at CNN. He has friends who still work there. He's got an anecdote. It tells you everything you need to know about this guy. Not Chris, Jeff Zucker. Apparently, when people meet him and they mispronounce his name and they say, "Oh, Mr. Zucker, nice to meet you," this guy goes, no, 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 no. It's Zucker like hooker, not Zucker like fudgesicle." Yeah. He literally does that. I mean, anybody who corrects someone on how to pronounce their last name with that little ditty, you know what kind of scumbag they are. But I think it's actually quite telling and sort of works with what we're talking about here today with regard to this saga. So as we go through this entire entangled, tortured, tawdry affair, and that's exactly what it is, please remember in the back of your mind, it's Zucker like hooker, not Zucker like fudgesicle. Your kids might be in the room. What do you want me to say? And first and foremost, even after we've got the name straight, please understand something. This is not about a relationship between a man and a woman. This is not about sex. This is not about love. This is about the Democrat media complex. It's a comic tragedy. This Jeff Zucker CNN affair. Yeah, it's an affair, all right. It's worse than a soap opera. Actually, it's not even a real life soap opera, but it's like a real life regular opera. It's Puccini esque in its over the top, dramatic, entangled storylines. Let's start first with Jeff Zucker, like Hooker's statement yesterday. It was really telling. As part of the investigation into Chris Cuomo's tenure at CNN, see, this all came from Chris Cuomo. I was asked about a consensual relationship with my closest colleague, someone I've worked with for more than 20 years. He then goes on to say he didn't disclose it and therefore he's resigning. He never names his paramour, trying to protect her anonymity there at CNN, right? Oh, don't worry, Jeff. Your pal Brian Stelter's to the rescue. Within 20 minutes, he outed the woman. Brian Stelter explained to everyone who Zucker was zucking. It's Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer Allison Gullis. I want to make sure I get the title right because she might not be holding on to it much longer. Here's Allison Gullis' statement. She says, Jeff and I have been close friends and professional partners for over 20 years. Recently, our relationship changed during COVID. Oh, didn't all of our relationships change during COVID? Although, I mean, not quite to this extent. I regret that we didn't disclose it at the time. That's what she regrets. She doesn't regret that she was, zucking a married man or anything like that. She doesn't regret that she was breaking her corporate rules. She doesn't regret that she got promoted at CNN while other women didn't, and now they're thinking, gee, maybe if I had just been, working the Zuck man like Allison, yeah, none of that she regrets. She regrets that she didn't disclose it. In a subsequent statement, she said this: I'm incredibly proud of my time at CNN and look forward to continuing the great work we do every day. Not so fast. So, this is what CNN and Zucker like Hooker, not Zucker like Fraggle Rock, would want everyone to think that Zucker entered into a consensual relationship with another adult, failed to report it. He's now stepping down. He regrets it. She stays at CNN. Bing, bang, boom. Cut and dry, right? Except it's not. Who's Allison Gullis? Well, when she's not zucking around with Zucker, she used to work as the comms director for now disgraced, resigned Governor Andrew Cuomo. Yeah. That guy. See, she started working for Zucker Like Hooker over at NBC back in the mid 90s. Then she left in 2012 become comms director for the brand new Andrew Cuomo governor's office. Then, when Zucker went to CNN, she ended up leaving the governor's office and working for him at CNN. See how this works? Network executive working for a broadcast news entity. Now I'm the comms director for a highly partisan political office. Now I'm back at CNN and I'm unbiased working for a mainstream media organ. Everything's fine. Don't worry. Mm-hmm. Katie Couric, who worked at NBC when both of them were there, she revealed something interesting in her memoirs. New York Post highlighted it. Here, let me tell you. She and her husband, this is Katie writing, she and her husband and kids had moved into the apartment right above Jeff and Karen's. Everyone who heard about their cozy arrangement thought it was super strange. Yeah, it is kind of super strange. Let me get this straight. During the day, you work under Jeff Zucker at NBC, and then you go home and you're, well, I guess on top. I mean, you want a little variety. Couric added that Zucker insisted on hiring Gullis during his tenure at NBC, even though her position had long been filled. He's trying to push her on the Today Show. It says, at a certain point, Jeff made a huge push to bring on Allison Gullis at the Today Show. I had to wonder why Jeff was angling so hard to bring Allison on board. Hard angling there, Jeff. They were joined at the hip. Oftentimes when you hear the phrase joined at the hip, you probably think in your mind's eye that the person's right next to you, right? Here's your hip, their hip, and you're joined at the hip. But you could also be joined at the hip, in another way, like the person's right sort of in front of you, or you're right behind them, or they're on top of you. But either way, you're joined at the hip, and it sure seems like they were joined at the hip. But this is where the soap opera gets really delicious and really good and really tawdry and really outrageous. You see, it appears the relationship that led to Zucker resigning in disgrace, the one with Allison Gullis, and outing the tawdry affair to the world, apparently it was deliberately leaked by none other than Chris Cuomo. Yeah, remember that guy? He's the former governor's brother who recently was dismissed at CNN for his own inappropriate behavior. Here's how the Daily Beast points it out. Notice Zucker mentioned how this came from the Cuomo investigation, a senior CNN source told the Daily Beast. People think this is clearly Cuomo dragging down Zucker on his way out. All right, so do you have your scorecards here? Because I'm going to walk you through the whole damn thing. Zucker hires Gullis in the mid-90s, promotes and pushes her across the NBC spectrum. They're joined at the hip. And they even get condos in the same building, one floor apart. Gullis then leaves NBC, takes a politically partisan job working for now disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo in the communications department. She's the comms director. That's important. Remember that in a moment. She eventually leaves that job, follows Zucker again because she just can't get enough of the Zook. She leaves the governor's office and then goes to work for CNN. And at the same time, Zucker, now at CNN, entices Chris Cuomo from ABC, that's where he used to be, to come work at CNN. So Allison leaves Governor Andrew Cuomo's office, goes to work for Zucker. Zucker now convinces Chris Cuomo, the governor's brother, to come work at CNN. Now, when the COVID pandemic hit, apparently everything changed, and not just the level at which Zucker and Gullis were joined at the hip. No. Something else happened. Remember, Chris Cuomo had a frequent guest on his program, his brother, Andrew Cuomo. And we all know what happened during those interviews, but let's stop for a moment and focus on what didn't happen. Chris Cuomo didn't ask his brother, the governor, any questions regarding the deadly policy that the governor instituted of putting COVID-19 positive people into nursing homes, thus resulting in the death of thousands of elderly New Yorkers. No questions were ever asked of the governor by his brother Chris about the mounting allegations of sexual misconduct that led to his eventual resignation. None of those questions were asked. It's almost like Chris was not only protecting his brother, but Jeff was protecting his girlfriend's old boss. Yeah, it's the same guy, Governor Andrew Cuomo. In fact, not only does Zucker and Cuomo's former aide Gullis and Chris, the governor's brother, use their network to protect Andrew Cuomo, they eventually shamelessly promote him as the next president of the United States. That's because they had already sort of moved on from promoting Michael Avenatti as the next president of the United States. But then when Cuomo resigns in disgrace, finally there's some scrutiny paid to Chris Cuomo's behavior. Now, meanwhile, for like over a year, a lot of us on the sidelines were saying, hey, isn't this a little bit of a conflict of interest? Maybe it's me. I didn't go to journalism school. I'm not a hotshot like Jeff Zucker, like Hooker, not Zucker like Fuddruckers. But it seems to me that maybe Chris Cuomo has a conflict of interest and shouldn't be interviewing his brother in the midst of all of this. But then finally, after the disgraceful resignation of Andrew Cuomo, people start to say, maybe we should relook at Chris Cuomo's behavior. Yeah. And the extent of his work supporting his brother and smearing his accusers, his brother's accusers, comes to light. And he's summarily dismissed. And now, during the battle over his dismissal, Chris Cuomo burns the whole damn thing down. Oh, you're going to get rid of me? I'm going to get rid of all of you. Because that's how it works. Did you follow all of that? Because that leads us to today, where Jeff Zucker is gone. Allison Gullis, the former comms director. Remember when I wanted you to remember that she worked as the comms director? The communications department basically handles all of a politician's or government officials, elected officials, media appearances and makes sure that their boss is protected at all times. That was her job when she worked for Governor Andrew Cuomo. Now, think through all of the appearances of Governor Andrew Cuomo on CNN. Think through how CNN basically ignored all of the scandals surrounding Governor Andrew Cuomo until they couldn't ignore it anymore. It's almost like she still maintained her job while working at CNN. These are awful, terrible human beings. And they all flow through a nonstop revolving door through three entities: journalism, the Democrat Party politics, and government power. It's what Andrew Breitbart used to call the Democrat media complex. And boy, oh boy, would I love to hear from him right about now.